Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
All coaches aspire to be champions, and this time of year is when you set that vision for your team. By now, listeners of this podcast know about Signature Championship rings and have met some of the Signature Champion coaches who partner with them to celebrate their achievements. Reputable, affordable, first-class customer service are just some of the ways we keep hearing coaches describe Signature Championship rings. So as you're ramping up this summer for the upcoming season, create a championship vision for your team now using the design tool at signaturechampions.com/podcast. Give your team a visual to motivate their pursuit of a championship in 2024. And when your team has a championship moment to celebrate, we highly recommend consulting with Signature Championship rings.
But then once we scrimmaged and everything was fine and the depth of knowledge was way beyond what it's ever been in terms of from senior to freshman and from first guy to last guy, it's been something now that not that we just do, but something that we believe in, and that's ultimately become kind of who we are.
On today's episode of Coach and Coordinator Podcast, Tyler Hopperton, the head football coach at Mount St. Joseph, joins us to discuss his innovative approach to building a program and ideas that raise the bar. Coach Hopperton was named the head coach at just 27 years old without prior coordinator experience. In his first 7 seasons as the head football coach, Hopperton has earned a 51-17 overall record and 41-9 in conference, and has led the Lions program to the 5th HCAC Championship in 2018, the 6th in 2022 with a playoff appearance, and the 7th Conference Championship and NCAA playoff appearance in 2023. He was named the HCAC Coach of the Year in 2022 and 2023. In our conversation, he shares his journey and coaching philosophy, emphasizing the importance of authenticity and transparency with his players. He discusses building his coaching staff organically, focusing on transparency and aligning with the program's values, and he offers unique insights into special teams, highlighting the need for clear drills and efficient practice time. We highlight one of his innovative strategies in not having a traditional depth chart during training camp, which promotes competition and accelerated learning among players, as well as other benefits that it brings to the program. Be sure to stay tuned for our Winning Edge takeaways following the episode. What you see on tape is a direct reflection of what you teach and how you teach. Video is important, but if you don't teach well, you're not going to like what you see on your video. First Down Playbook has been helping coaches teach better for 13 years. It allows you to present installs, playbooks, and practice cards in half the time with NFL quality. Coaching tools like video pairing, a player app, practice schedules, and wristband sheets have made First Down Playbook a program management system with everything in one place. If you're in a position of leadership with your football program, receive a free 1-week look at First Down Playbook. Call them at 512-814-6158 or visit them on their website or social media. Mention Coach and Coordinator Podcast or use the coupon code COACH24 to receive a $100 discount off the normal $700 First Down Playbook team membership price. Links and the phone number are in the show notes. On today's Coaching Coordinator Podcast, we're going to talk about ideas that raise the bar, and joining me to share some of his thoughts on the game and coaching is the head football coach at Mount St. Joseph. Tyler, great to have you here on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
So Tyler, you and I got to talking probably about back in January. I had just had Caleb Coral on the podcast and invited you guys on to the D3 Top 25 clinic, which you presented on special teams. There's something we'll get into a bit here, but really have become interested in your program and the things you're doing and have been impressed with just the track record of what you guys have done there. And, for you were named a head coach when you were 27. And at the time you hadn't been a coordinator yet. You are given the chance to lead. And, you took an approach that you felt best for someone in that position with the experience you had that was going to work. And you used a quote by an author named Craig Groeschel, a New York Times bestselling author, who said, "Follow a leader who's always real instead of who is always right." And that kind of became the way you do things. Would love to hear you talk about that.
Yeah, for sure. I first, want to give credit to, our athletic director, Steve Radcliffe, and associate athletic director, Melanie Wagner, who's now the head AD here at the Mount, who gave the 27-year-old with almost zero experience chance to lead my alma mater. And not only just the chance to do that, but the chance to do it organically, where it wasn't, hey, the expectation is you're 10-0 champs year one. It was, hey, we want this done right, and you're going to have time to do it right. And so once you're given that green light too of we want it done the right way, not just the results immediately, then I think you can take a step back and go, what is right? And, to go back to that quote, even if nobody's always right, but at 27, first-time head coach, I'm definitely not always going to be right. And as a young coach, it's easy to say, I don't want to be wrong. I don't want to show any weakness to these guys. I'm glad that we took the authentic approach here. And if this thing's going to be done right, I got to be me and do it my way and do it the way that's best for the Mount. And we had some early success. And so it's easy to keep buying into being transparent and taking lumps. There's certainly games we lost because of me, and being honest about that and learning from that, and then shortly winning games for the opposite reason a couple of years later, I think really shows your guys that you're working and trying to get a little bit better every day, just like them.
It's stepping back in how you started to put this together. You mentioned the transparency. You mentioned you're going to build this on being real. For you, in putting a staff together, then how did you build that? How did you find guys who were going to fit that, who are going to work with, a 27-year-old coach and help them build it a certain way?
Yeah, so it was a unique mix initially, and really I only had one full-time coach with me the first couple years and a halftime coach. And it was the polar opposites of a defensive coordinator that was coaching longer than I'd been alive, and an offensive coordinator who had even less experience than I did. And so not only new in general, it was, the exact opposite. So really just being especially transparent and honest with those guys first, then just created a waterfall to everything else. And once the three of us were on the same page, it was easy to get other coaches to get on the same page, and then our players. And, really great credit to Rick Thompson and Caleb Coral that they're the ones calling the offense and defense. Not that special teams don't matter, but those guys have, really cared about putting their guys in the right spot and would do it or die trying. And being transparent with those guys too, and amplifying what those guys were trying to do, allowed us to get the players to buy in as well.
So taking this approach, one, having that support of your administration that you mentioned, that, hey, we know it's going to take time. We're going to allow you to build this the right way. Do you feel that opened things up for you as a young coach, that maybe you didn't feel that pressure to go and copy and paste what somebody else is doing, but, could develop things, as you said, organically that really fit who you guys were and the university?
Yeah, I think once that pressure of time was taken off, not that, if we went and lost most of our games, that's going to give me that much time. I don't know that they'd be that patient. But the emphasis from the president to the ADs was, we want the MSJ football experience to be elevated, and we want to see you progress towards that. And being a former student athlete here, being on the championship team as a player, and then being an assistant coach, and then the opportunity to be head coach, and I was a resident assistant in the dorms. I was very active on campus, embracing that experience and turning it into, understanding what the Mount was capable of doing for student athletes and turning it into that, both as a recruiting system, both as our actual culture and system. But given that opportunity of, hey, you don't have to just win immediately, definitely took that off. And I mean, that's a big reason I shut it out earlier, that I give that as much credit as anything else, that actually time. Because I think too many times anymore, it's, okay, it's wins and roster size. And so those things can work long term, I think, if the foundation's right. So luckily I had time to do that and support to do that.
And looking at some of the things you've done, I know for you, you talked about bringing on the offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator. You gravitated towards special teams. It's what you spoke about at the D3 Top 25 Clinic, and I'll link to the course from Coach in our show notes. But again, not a copy-paste approach to it, that you took a look at where you're at, the people you had, that you had to mold special teams in your system for running it to the D3 model and one that closely relates to high school model. Would love to hear just your approach to that and some of the things that help make that work for you.
Yeah. So in my very first year coaching, our special teams coordinator and defensive coordinator in the same year, it's a guy named Ron Corradini Sr., and he was a GA for Bo Schembechler in the 1960s. He was the second head coach here at the Mount, coached for Lee Corso at Indiana at one point. Bo was a great mentor of mine. He was my D coordinator my senior year playing here. And he was the only one, again, he called our defense and did special teams. So as a young coach, making $4,000, I was like, that seems like an opportunity. So I jumped in, helped him with everything he could, obviously on both special teams and defense. But gradually that year, just kind of my special teams role grew and grew and grew. And, ultimately as a young coach, I was just trying to get in where you could fit in. I saw a void and filled it. And really from there, I've been, even if not the coordinator, have been extremely involved in that. But because of the lack of resources at the time, once I became the special teams coordinator, it's hard to rely on coaches sometimes if they're not around all the time, have other jobs, and especially schematically, they might not understand or have time to understand what all you're trying to do. And with my personality, sometimes it's easy to be like, fine, I'll just do it myself. And I think a lot of coaches can do that. So I did that for several years, but I'd be bogged down. And on game day, when something went wrong, the only person I could ask something of was myself. And so creating a system that worked for us with our given resources to amplify what we could do was then my goal. And basically what we did was create circuits, which are not new. I didn't come up with the idea of circuits, but I could teach coaches, those same coaches, how to run certain drills and the one or two key points in those, to where at practice time, okay, Coach Johnny shows up from teaching all day and he shows up right before practice. I can tell him, hey, you're doing this kickoff coverage circuit. And he knows he's done it. He knows the coaching points and he can roll. And myself, I can give myself maybe a more elaborate station or something that, is a little bit more schematic focused or whatever. And so over the years then, that's just become the system of, now we split up in the position groups on most special teams, and those coaches just need to understand what that person does, and they don't even necessarily need to understand the entire scheme. But then on game day, those same coaches can go, hey, I coach the punt gunners on Tuesdays, and then on Saturday, I'm the guy that watches the punt gunners. And they don't even need to know if we called red or blue or whatever. They can just look at those individual skills. And so we've grown that, and then our support has also grown. So now too, each unit maybe has a different lead for each position. The coaches that can take on more have more, but we have volunteers that'll watch a certain position, and maybe it's a position that's just really hard to see. And they show up on game day, they can watch the far contained guy on kickoff, but give me actual feedback. Because I think that's a big gap too, is it's so hard to see everything. And that's obviously a big reason, offense, defense, everybody's on headsets. There's 100 guys in the box for offense and defense, but for special teams, there's none, or it's somebody's secondary thing. So allowing everybody one single thing to do and watch on game days and tying that to the role during the week has really amplified our special teams play.
Yeah, I think that's important what you've done there. And, I think for myself growing up as a head coach, I learned that the hard way of how you put somebody in charge of the unit and then you look around during that time and there's only one guy working, right? You're not maximizing everybody. And on game day, there's only one guy looking at that unit. So I think just marrying it up that way makes a lot of sense. And even from the standpoint of just you being efficient with your teaching and getting the staff ready for something that you said, it could be very focused and granular for each of those position coaches to be able to do their job and to help the players ultimately on game day.
Right. And there's some positions too that 90% of their guys are involved in the special teams drills. And instead of just standing on the side or not being involved, or even worse, coaching a coaching point they don't even understand. So just systemizing it and whatever kind of works for you. Everybody's staff and makeup is obviously a little different, but that's really helped us, as well as consolidating skills per special teams that, we really focused on individual drills. We rarely do much 11 on 11 during the season, where we try to get quality competitive reps kind of isolated. And I think marrying those two things has really helped us.
I know in looking at some of your other ideas that you feel help raise the bar for you, one that you pointed me to first was the way that you guys approach camp. And the main thing being that there's a lack of a true depth chart in training camp right up until your first scrimmage.
Yeah. So again, 27 years old, 0 head coaching experience. My first big bright idea to our coordinators was, hey, what if we had no depth chart? And that was a little hard to explain, at first. I think I sold it to Rick, our defensive coordinator, about communication, right? Now we have a starting Mike linebacker with a promising freshman in the same group, not just, hey, we return 9 starters, let's put them all together. I don't need to know what they can do. We've seen it, right? And so the offense with timing and pass concepts, and especially at the time, Coach Coral, was throwing it probably about 90% of the time and was worried about that timing. But once we committed to just, let's put them in groups, and you can even mix up the groups every couple of days to kind of get the right combination of people or to mix it up. But then once we scrimmaged and everything was fine and the depth of knowledge was way beyond what it's ever been in terms of from senior to freshman and from first guy to last guy, it's been something now that, not that we just do, but something that we believe in, and that's, ultimately become kind of who we are.
Yeah, I could see after you told me about this that there's a ton of benefits to it. It's actually really smart. Now, you have to have the patience as a coach to understand how this is going to work, that, initially you're not having all these guys work together. And I want to get into, just the first scrimmage and what that looks like then. But the depth of knowledge you mentioned, you take a freshman and you're putting him next to a guy who's been a starter, he automatically has someone to learn from beyond the coach. And that guy really takes a leadership role. I mean, again, you look at the benefits that come from this. I mean, there's just a ton of things that, as we said, are going to raise the bar for you in your program.
Yeah, in my first year coaching, I remember in my very first year coaching, so I'm 23 years old, former linebacker, coaching linebackers. And about halfway through the season, I'm like, man, I wish I had one more year. Because coaching those guys in the system I played in, and just the level of knowledge that I felt like I gained from teaching those guys those things, that my knowledge in those first couple of weeks just doubled or more. And so that was a big motivation for why we did it, where it gives our returning guys with experience, and not even our starters, right? You might have a junior or senior that's been second, third string, but he knows your system. Maybe physically he's still trying to get there. But you have guys like that now building into your freshmen and new guys. This is how we practice. This is how we do 7-on-7. Here's what you do in this play. Where when it's freshman on freshman, new guy on new guy, now you're surrounded by people that have no clue what's going on, how to do the drill. They're all asking each other questions and no one knows the answer. And then I also think, too, at Division III, we only have about 3 weeks from first practice to first varsity game. And so 3 weeks is essentially zero time to find out if a new freshman can play for you 3, 4, 5 weeks from now. So I think those questions we found were more important of we need to see what these guys can do. And I don't think it's a fair try for them if, hey, I'm trying to prove to Coach Hop that I can play linebacker, but I'm behind 4 freshman D linemen that have no clue what's going on. Next to another linebacker has no clue what's going on. Where instead of now how we do it is, all right, now I'm this freshman linebacker trying to play. There's a couple varsity guys in front of me. I'm next to an experienced guy. And to me, going against the same type of situation as well, where I might be going against a mix of returning linemen trying to block me and that sort of thing. So I think it just gives guys those opportunities, gets it on film. It's about equal reps as you go through camp. And I think it, the proof is in the pudding kind of thing. There's plenty of examples then too, because you haven't restricted anybody. So there's also plenty of examples, not only of guys who can, but guys who can't as well.
As coaches, we know that some of the biggest hurdles to our team's success can come from off the field. Your team needs support to tackle the endless list of expenses, uniforms, training equipment, travel, and more. But raising that money can feel like a full-time job. Thankfully, there's Vertical Raise. Vertical Raise is the premier online fundraising platform using innovative technology to create the easiest and most efficient system available. Raise more money in less time with a local fundraising coach who works with your team every step of the way to customize the ideal fundraiser. With options for online donations, digital discount cards, premium product sales, and even spirit shops, Vertical Raise has top-of-the-line solutions for every fundraising style. To find out more, visit verticalraise.com and we'll get you connected with an exclusive offer on your first fundraiser. I've always been interested in the use of technology to make our jobs more effective, so I'm excited to continue sharing modern football technology with you here on the podcast. This innovative system leverages tendencies to improve self-scouting, game planning, and in-game decision-making at the speed of the game. Modern football stands out because it's a battle-tested platform used by teams at all levels, like 4-time national champion Bishop Gorman, the 5-time California state champion Folsom Bulldogs, 6-time Texas state champion Lake Travis, Cal football, and the CFL's Grey Cup champions, the Montreal Alouettes. So book a demo today to see why these teams trust modern football technology. Visit www.teammofo.com/demo and mention Coach and Coordinator Podcast or use the coupon code CC10 to receive 10% off your first year. Yeah, I see, the benefit in being the mental reps. One of the best ways in just remembering this from, how people learn is one of the best ways to learn something is to be able to teach it. And essentially that's what you have going on. I think you're putting people maybe, they don't know it directly, but you're putting them into a leadership role. So the leadership is developing among your team as well. And by not having a depth chart, I think you're really developing more true depth. I can't tell you how many times, you're up as, the offensive coordinator and you're working with your varsity group who you're getting ready for that first week, whoever you're playing there. And then you go down and watch the freshmen a little bit and you're like, oh my God, nobody knows anything here. This is so far behind. Yeah. And in a way, you think about the way you're doing it. I mean, you accelerate their growth in your program because they're getting a true taste of that. And they're learning from being in that situation, but they're also learning from the people around them.
Yeah. Absolutely. And we talked about timing before too, and concerns about timing. But in this, you can always play devil's advocate too, where there's not too many teams, football teams at any level, that go through all 10, 12, 15 games with the same starting 22 guys. It just doesn't happen. It's too physical of a sport. There's too many things that go on. So you can talk about, hey, I want this quarterback and center to have all this timing, or I want this quarterback and these receivers. Okay, that's great. Your first offense only goes with the first offense all camp. Now week one, boom, your center gets rolled up on, he's out. Now your quarterback's taking snaps from somebody he's never taken snaps next to, who's blocking next to guys he's never blocked next to, right? And so that was a big part of it too, that we're like, I'd much rather be prepared for that So now Johnny comes off the bench, play center, and we're good. He's been with this group. He's been with this quarterback. He's used to the checks. He's used to the tempo. And, that's really helped our success these last couple of years. It's not like we've been injury-free, but we've had guys that have legit experience behind them.
I think in some ways this helps culture the team, the morale of the team, in that it removes that excuse of, well, I never got to work with the first team. Well, I'm great as a freshman, but they can't see that because I'm down here. Things really start to become pretty clear. And I would imagine that guys really start to understand, here's what I need to do to actually be a first teamer.
Yep. And we split up our coaches. So we have the roster size that during training camp we're 7-on-7 on both ends. And what we've done the last couple of years is great, though, and D coordinator down at the one end, but groups A, B, and C will all get coached by them and get called by them. And then I typically go with another offensive assistant down to the other end. So it's like, all right, I'm either getting reps in front of the OC and DC or the head coach. And so I think even live, and then on the other side of that, then these coaches in every group they're coaching is probably a starter and varsity all-conference guys. And so I think it just keeps everybody honest too. And then just the competition as well, like our older guys know that the young guys are getting reps, especially in those first couple of weeks, no matter what. And if you know the guy behind you is getting reps no matter what, there's opportunity. So I think it ultimately just keeps guys going too, because they know everybody's given the opportunity to show what they can do.
So things come together then for the first scrimmage. There, you do put a number one unit out there. And so I guess, as they say, the proof is in the pudding. So what does it look like? What does the timing look like as far as, I'm sure that's probably the biggest objection of anybody who hears this. So what does it look like for you? How's that panned out?
Yeah. So I also have never tried to win a scrimmage.
Right.
The scoreboard, and we've been fortunate to have the same scrimmage with Center College. And Coach Andy Fry's been there a long time, and it's been a great kind of counter to us, and it's a great scrimmage every year. But there's not a live quarterback. The special teams are a little wonky, all those sorts of things. So there's plenty of things that can kind of mess up what we feel like the scoreboard says. In a certain year, there might be guys you don't play anyway, or maybe guys are a little banged up or whatever it is. And so I think when you kind of take that aside, that you don't make it competitive. But there's also, because we mix up the groups, day one, like some years, it's like that morning we're like, this is who's starting. Because I think that challenge too is also something we get a lot out of. So I think getting that, because sometimes, okay, we wait till Thursday to post a travel squad and guys don't know, and they're fighting through Thursday to make a travel squad. To me, that also kind of helps resemble how that goes throughout the season, where, hey, we're up until that Friday or even that morning, you guys are fighting for it. We decide. And then I think when they go out there, it then heightens the need for extra communication, because maybe there's some new faces or some different pieces that maybe I haven't, but they've been doing the same thing. And so I think by the time, we haven't seen any drop in terms of scrimmage performance at all, but definitely after, I think that kind of sense of not knowing kind of gets rid of some of the comfort that some of your guys get. But then it also, a lot of times in a scrimmage, we kind of sprinkle the other guys in, right? So great, you started, but maybe our 3-year starting safety did one drive and he's out. Okay, well, we're not putting the 2 defense in, we're putting this one guy in and the next D tackle in. And so I think that resembles then how you've been practicing anyway. And then it's allowed us then in week 1 to kind of put together groups and subbing patterns, and ultimately, the hot hand plays. So I think we've never just sat out there with the same 11 over and over again on either side of the ball. So I think it just starts that precedent early at the scrimmage.
Well, and it is short-sighted to say, how did it work out in the scrimmage? Because ultimately we want to know how it worked out over the course of the year. And you guys are doing a great job. You've been able to win some big games, maybe that people didn't expect you to win. You've won championships. From that side, your idea has proved itself that it's working, at least working for you. And I think, that's what you set out to do, is find something that works for our program.
Right. Yeah, and ultimately that's to setting that competitive bar. That's how we talk in the recruiting aspect is we've never promised anybody they're going to play, but that's why that's big for us in recruiting of I can promise you equal reps for a couple weeks. What you do with that is up to you, and not that there's not opportunity after that, but we've created our system to give everybody on our roster a chance to compete against everybody and show us what they got in a short time frame. And then that mindset of kind of this, anywhere, anytime kind of mindset we're trying to build. Okay, well, to me, that just grows into that. If we talk about being competitive, well, to me, the best way for us to be competitive systematically.
So in taking what you've learned so far through your career and for our coaches out there, what are some of your big takeaways as you look back on this and what you've been able to do so far?
I would say reflection, where early on being honest with myself about what was happening compared to what I felt like I and the team was capable of, and trying to double down on any experience I had, where if I just kind of let it happen and wait for years of experience to be the reason that we grew, we'd still be doing that. And so using doubt where there was plenty of doubt, both self-doubt and doubt from competitors and whoever when 27-year-old becomes head coach, but using that not to be negative or create, negative self-talk or self-doubt, but allowing yourself to be challenged. And, with our staff and even our players, I don't mind being wrong. I'm not wrong all the time, but I'm wrong a decent amount of time, but I'm never wrong about the same thing twice. So a lot of it's like, I don't mind being challenged because to me, it helps you solidify things and then it helps you attack certain points. So going back to being transparent, the ultimate way to be the most transparent is to be truly reflective, what's happening, what you're capable of, and what that capability gap is. So being honest with yourself in a win or a loss, finding those gaps, challenging those gaps, and trying to build on that. And that helped us build in double time instead of just learning as it went.
I think the other aspect about this, Coach, is that, you've been able to grow with the staff. You guys have been able to grow together professionally, and, you've helped your assistants, and I think you've done this for yourself too, really add value to the program. What are some of the ways that you approach that?
Yeah. Big thing when we have our staff meetings is encouraging guys, from the guys that have been coaching for 40 or 50 years, the guys that just started coaching, is adding value, solving problems. As an assistant coach, it is easy to identify problems. You could identify a million problems in a football program, even one that's 10-0. There's plenty of problems to identify. But the coaches that can solve those problems, kind of unprovoked or unforced, they identify and then solve these problems, are the ones that will then slowly get more and more and bigger problems to solve. Where if there's a coach who consistently is turning out, hey, I asked him to do this scouting report and it's awesome, and he does a great job, he's consistent, great. Odds are I'm going to ask him to do more, right? To add more value because he can. He's capable of doing that and closing that capability gap. And treating my coaching staff like you treat your players has also helped me, because when I was named a young head coach, that was the biggest hurdle. That I had all these culture ideas, I had all these ideas about football stuff, but then it was time to manage a staff and it was like, oh, I never really thought about this. And sometimes running a football staff's like being in a middle school cafeteria, and there's all kinds of issues to solve and problems and gossip and all this stuff. And you're like, whoa, I never thought about this. So framing myself to think, okay, I've been a position coach, I've been a special teams coordinator. What are my expectations of players? And trying to parallel that with our coaching staff of, okay, if a player is just dying to be the starting corner and he just hasn't had that opportunity yet, you still want that player to work to that. You don't want him to just wait, right? If a player waits around, well, I'll act like a starting corner once I'm a starting corner. Well, you'll never be one. And it's the same thing with coaches too. Okay, if you want promoted, you want a title, you want these things, you have to have the ability to do it before the title comes. Every once in a while, you might just be the only coach on staff until you get promoted because there's no one else. Same reason some guy that's maybe not ready to start corner starts corner because of just lack of competition. But that's our job as coaches to create competition, and that's my job as head coach. So the add value, solve problems is something we talk to with our coaches, but it's also something we talk about with our players, and then again encourage coaches to parallel their pursuit of their coaching career to the expectations they hold for their own position groups as well.
Coach, I really appreciate all the insight you gave us into your program, into your coaching journey. Some of the ideas you shared here today, I think would be very helpful to coaches out there. And certainly best of luck to you and the Lions here in 2024.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Here are Winning Edge takeaways and ideas for implementation. 1. Prioritize authenticity and transparency. Coach Hopperton emphasizes the importance of being authentic and transparent with players. You should focus on being real rather than always striving to be right. This builds trust and respect, leading to a more cohesive and motivated team. 2. Adopt innovative depth chart strategy. Instead of having a traditional depth chart during training camp, do what Coach Hopperton does in promoting competition and accelerated learning by delaying the establishment of the depth chart until the first scrimmage. This strategy encourages players to compete harder and learn faster, which brings more of a competitive environment and enhances the overall team performance. There's other ways to be innovative with your depth charts. It just doesn't have to be the traditional way. Investigate ways your team might reorganize the beginning of camp for a stronger start to the season. And 3, proactive problem solving and value addition. Coach Hopperton highlights the importance of coaches being proactive in identifying and solving issues within the team. By focusing on adding value and fostering growth and professional development, you can enhance the overall program. Encouraging a culture of continuous improvement and competitiveness helps both players and coaches achieve their full potential. Be sure to follow all we're doing at coachandcoordinator.com. Check out our 10% toolkit where we share some of the best products in the marketplace to help your program achieve success. And follow us on X at Coach K. Grabowski.